have your attention, please? Everybody find a seat, please, if you can. Do we have any more chairs we could bring in? Thank you, and I hope everyone had a happy new year. We're here to continue the Dalton project. Wayne, would you come up and give us like a brief overview? While you're coming, we're going to take an hour of public comments. I ask you to sign in. If you did that, I'll be getting the signature sheets up here quickly. And we'll take an hour for public comments. We'll take 30 minutes for rebuttal. We have to finish by 4 o'clock so we can start our next meeting. So thank you, Wayne.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you're all aware, this is the continuance of the Dalton Drive commercial. This item was continued from the November 7th, 2016 BCC meeting, and it was continued till this afternoon. If I could, Madam Chairman, I'll have Rita come up and brief the board about where we're at and some of the, just kind of maybe familiarize yourself with the project again. I know it has been a couple of months, but I'll have her come up and kind of brief you where we're at with it.
Good afternoon. Rita Banhunyadi from the Planning Department. I'm going to be quoting sections from the staff report. This is a major development order application requesting approval for a 6,945 square foot of commercial building at the intersection of 30A and Dalton Drive. The land use of this half an acre parcel is VMU, and it is since 1996. The project went to TRC meeting on August 3rd and Planning Commission meeting on September 8th. Both, they were recommended for approval, except the Planning Commission had concern about future land use at the area, but it is what it is at this point. The project was first presented to the Board of County Commissioners on October 11th. The meeting was not finished due to the amount of public comments that we have received, so it was continued until this afternoon. The Planning Department received a large number of public comments. We have all that correspondence in the report included. The main outstanding comments at this point is compatibility and the right of use of Dalton Drive. We have received an alternate architectural design that is an option at the moment for the board to decide if we want to go with that. And as of right now, the final order includes some conditions that the board may or may not please to keep it in the final order as the decision goes. As far as land development code compliance, the project meets the minimum technical requirements. If the board has any questions to the staff, anything that maybe we talked about last meeting, or we have the applicant here that would answer questions.
Right. Do we have any questions, comments from the board? We have 69 people that have signed up. We have an hour. I ask you to put a check by your name if you've already spoken. If I call your name and you've already spoken, please let someone speak that has not spoken. Silence your phones if you would right now. And if you would, keep conversations between you in the audience at a minimum or none. If you need to talk to your neighbor, go outside, because it's a small room, we're crowded, and we need to have everybody's undivided attention. Thank you. And with that in mind, yes.
Let me do one thing before, just to make sure the record's clear. This is not a continued hearing. This is a continuation of a previous hearing, just so the record's clear. We've already taken evidence from the applicant, and we have taken a number of public comments already. It was rescheduled to finish taking public comments and to take rebuttal from the applicant. So it's not a continuance. It's actually a hearing that has partially been heard already, and we're going to attempt to finish it today. And I also want to announce that we only have 3 commissioners hearing this continued hearing, because these are the three remaining commissioners that heard the first half or first part of the application at the first quasi-judicial hearing. Also, we have a court reporter present today, so when you come to speak, if you would say your last name, and I need for everyone who intends to speak to stand and raise your right hand and let me swear you in at this point. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth? Thank you. And again, when you come to the podium, say that you've been sworn and spell your last name. That's helpful for the court reporter.
Okay, the
Thank
first,
you.
I'm going to give you, yes, go ahead.
Please, Chance Powell, are you present? Would you come forward, please? I assume I can ask him a question.
Oh, sure.
Chance,
Yes, sir.
Dalton Avenue has been in question as the ownership or the responsibility of maintenance or whatever on that particular road. Have you been able to establish if that road at one time was accepted by the Board of County Commissioners, when it was accepted, and what was the understanding of that acceptance?
It is, I do not have the date that it was accepted on hand right now. It is my understanding, and Mark maybe will back me up with this, that the board did accept the entire road for maintenance. However, the county has only actively maintained all but 89 feet of the road.
And the 89 feet is that northern section primarily?
Is the northern section, the 89 feet just south of the 38 right of way.
Okay, and this may be for legal. The owners of Dalton, I mean not Dalton, but of Snappy Turtle, the construction project, they own land adjacent to Dalton Avenue. And correct me if I'm wrong, but all the people that adjoin that road have certain egress, ingress rights to that use of that road. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I think it's everybody in the Dalton subdivision.
Right,
So-
but everybody that's down there has that egress and all there too. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So would
Thank
that
you.
mean that the developer would have that same, is he part of the Dalton subdivision?
Yes, I looked at, in fact, funny you should ask that. I looked at his deed, and indeed, he is part of his deed description is a lot and block of Dalton subdivision. Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments before we start taking public comment? The first one, I believe it's T-O-N-E-S-S. Odin Tonas. And then after that's Brenda Smith. So, are you Mr. Tonas?
Yes.
Would you like to come up to the podium and speak?
No, I'm referring to,
Okay. Brenda Smith.
Yes, I don't wish to speak, I just thought that was a sign-in.
Okay, Becky Rutledge.
Wait.
Wait, hold on. Are you Mr. Tonas?
I am,
You decided to speak?
no,
I'm gonna speak for him, I just wanted to make sure he wasn't passed before I got up there.
Oh, okay, I
Speak
see.
for him.
Yes, sir, I see. Thank you.
You were moving too quick there for me, and
Well, I'm a kindergarten teacher and we learned to, but I'll slow down.
real short attention span.
We want to get a lot done in a little time.
Mr. Crew has already spoken on behalf of his clients at another, at the previous hearing.
Did you speak on behalf of Mr. Tonas?
No, I did not.
Okay, go ahead.
I did speak for other clients, but not for Mr. Thomas.
I'm going to let you speak for Mr. Tonas.
Thank you, ma'am. I have some handouts for the board. Is this a good place for me to sit? Okay.
Yes.
On the other side. Do you have an extra copy from the other side? Yes, I should. Is there an extra one there that I can have? If I can just get one.
Mr. Crew, do you want this handout to be entered into evidence?
Yes, I do.
And I apologize, I don't know what number we're up to, so I'm just gonna mark it as objectors exhibit regarding the Walton County Comprehensive Plan as the first page, and then we'll get back and add a number to it later.
Thank you.
We accept that.
Does the applicant have any objections? Hang on just a second, sorry.
Where do I sit when we're on the phone? All right, so I'll just touch on the,
Hang on just a second.
Sure.
No particular objections, but you do have a right to respond, obviously, later, so.
Right,
Okay.
believe some of it is completely irrelevant, but we will address that at the appropriate time.
Commissioner, I would recommend you accept it as evidence.
I will.
Thank you. You're good, Mr.
All right, thank you. All right, so you'll notice from the handout, the first page, and my name for the record, I'm not sure, is Michael Crew, and I'm here for the property owner. So you'll see that the first page deals with the Walton County Comprehensive Plan, and it shows the actual language from the comp plan about what is compatibility. And I spoke about this at some length last meeting when I was speaking for another client, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'd like the board, the members who are voting on this issue, to make sure that they carefully consider this, and the comp plan tells us that we have to consider compatibility, and it tells us what we look at, which is type of use, density, intensity, height, scale, bulk, noise, traffic generation, lighting, signage, and you'll notice at the bottom it says uses that are not neighborhood commercial include convenience stores and gas stations and other types of uses. And so really what we look at is, does the proposed use serve the neighborhood? And that's what would make it compatible. If it serves uses outside the neighborhood, then it's not compatible. And so one of the slides that here, and we have it there on the poster, that one's good there, shows the Lakewood office building, which is a little further down the road, and it shows Lakewood would be an example of a project that was compatible with the Dalton Drive commercial area or the Dalton neighborhood. Now obviously the Lakewood is much larger than would fit on the subject parcel, but it is compatible because it serves the neighborhood. You know, it has neighborhood-oriented services. It has limited hours, 9 to 5. It's offices primarily, and it doesn't have the lighting and all the retail emphasis, and it doesn't serve just tourists, which is what this proposed commercial project would be just to serve tourists and people outside the neighborhood. And so that's an example of something that is compatible. So my client is not anti-development. I don't want you to think that we don't think anything should go there. We're not trying to preserve it as a park. We want the appropriate development, and something like Lakewood would be an appropriate development. But you can see how it's contrasted with the proposed commercial product. We've got this very large single-use building. It's going to have lighting until 9 or 10 o'clock at night when it closes, and then it's going to be employees having to come back and forth after that time. And also one of the big distinctions is that this proposed project does not front onto 30A and have access directly onto 30A like it should. It's going to have access through the neighborhood street. And that's one of the biggest problems, and we've already touched on that a little bit today when we start talking about how Dalton Drive is a private drive. It's not a public drive. If this project was to front on 30A, that'd be completely different. But this project is actually driving non-neighborhood traffic through the neighborhood to get to it. And that's one of the biggest problems with this project. And that's what keeps it from being compatible. And so we look at the other poster you had on there, Greg, behind that, talks about some of the other projects that the developer has claims shows compatibility, but those other projects are either on the north side of 30A, which we know is a different community than the south side of 30A. Our community is one of the oldest residential subdivisions in South County, and it's designated to be preserved. And so North 30A we know is a different animal, and we should not be looking across 30A into a commercial area and claiming that allows us to have that same type of use south of 30A. Everybody knows that's black and white, apples and oranges. They're just not comparable. And some of these projects that they're talking about, they're even like a half a mile away. So, we need to look at the neighborhood where this proposed project is to go, and we measure compatibility by that neighborhood, not by a commercial district that's on the other side of the road, other side of a major road. So that's the overview in terms of compatibility. Now, the second page in the handout that I gave you talks about application inaccuracy. And the problem we have here, and this is a basic problem with notice to the community, is that the application on page 13, which is also in your packet, it's the next page, which would be page 3. You'll notice the property information. It says it's lots 5 through 10. But if you flip back to page 2, you'll see that Maui Ways, which is the applicant, doesn't own lots 5 and 6. Somebody else does. And it's this 2625 First Avenue, which is a Minneapolis company, owns lots 5 and 6. So we have an application for property that's not even owned by the applicant. There's no showing of ownership. Maui Waves says that they own 7 through 10, but there's no showing of ownership of lots 5 and 6. So this application has to be denied just for that reason, which is an important reason, is that the application tries to use property that the applicant does not own or show any consent to use. All right, if you flip to another.
I'm sorry, Mr. Crick, can I ask a question, because I'm
Yes.
a little confused. Does Maui Waves own everything in the red?
Yes,
Okay,
which is
and
7 through 10.
the next parcel number, which ends with 0050, with the arrow and the red at the top and yellow around the 3 sides, is that owned by 2625 First Avenue?
Yes,
Okay.
and those are lots 5 and 6.
If you will look at the
Well,
survey,
You get rebuttal, I just want to ask that question.
And keep in mind that the application is what was noticed there with the sign on the property and what was the legal notice in the paper, is that notice would then take the public person to the application. And the application is at least deceptive if it's not just completely inaccurate and trying to use property owned by others. And we don't know if it was an oversight by the applicant, or we don't know if this is a way to try to preserve some future use of lots 5 and 6. So it's a serious problem that has to be addressed. And and I know, what the commission, of course, has the authority to do is to have the applicant go back through the process, clean up the application and notice it properly. We don't recommend that because because it's not compatible in the other things we've stated, but we think at the least what the county commission would have to do is to make the applicant go back through the process to have a proper application and public notice. So the next page in the handout is a safety concern. It looks like this. It says the top safety concern. And it talks about this what's called the visibility triangle, which is one of the plans that's provided by the applicant's engineer. And it's a basic safety concept that's throughout all projects in Walton County and throughout the state, probably the country. And it's with the volume of traffic that this project would generate, does it create a danger at the intersection, or is it a safe intersection? What we have here is because of the way Dalton Drive intersects 30A on that curve, we don't have enough of a visibility triangle to provide for safety. And you can see that even just at a 10 mile per hour bike speed, you've only got about a second and a half for reaction for people pulling out of Dalton Drive and going on to 30A, because there's a bike path. As you see in one of the pictures, the lower right picture, there's a bike path on the south side of 30A that crosses Dalton Drive and runs more or less parallel to 30A. And with people trying to get out, you can imagine the summer trying to pull out of Dalton Drive, all these hundreds or thousands of out-of-town, keep in mind this project is designed for the out-of-town tourists, which we all love, and we need the appropriate industries for them, not in our neighborhoods, but it's fine to have industries catering to tourists. And so we have all these tourists coming through here. They're in an unfamiliar area. They're on this little neighborhood drive, Dalton Drive, trying to get out on 30A, and it's not a lighted intersection. And you know how it is in the summer. That tourist is gonna find an opening they think is coming up in the traffic, and it's gonna try to zoom out on 30A. You've got the curve in the road, gives you limited visibility, and they're gonna end up hitting a bicyclist or another motorist. There's just not a safe intersection there. That whole intersection, if it was public roads, would need to be redesigned, straightened out, and would need to be lighted in order to become a safe intersection. So that's a very important concern. We all know that there was one of there was a young, I think, tourist struck on 30A on a bike path just a few months ago in a similar type of situation. Right. And then the Dalton Drive, which we've already spoke about a couple times, is a private road. We know that it has not been county maintained. That's been verified by county staff, and that there's a large overlap with the unmaintained space there at the corner of Dalton and 30A, and where this project wants to go in, and this project proposes to pave the road and to try to use part of that road for public purposes. And we've had some discussion about who owns that road, and it's all the property owners in the Dalton unrecorded subdivision own that road, and they all have equal rights to the road. And one of the most important things that happens when you have a shared ownership of a road is that your neighbor cannot dominate the use of it so that you can't use it anymore, and your neighbor cannot alter the use or the condition of the road in a material way that interferes with your use. So there's not a situation where somebody wants to move in next door and build another single-family residence and use that road. That's a common existing use in the subdivision, which was accepted and which was the intended use of the road. We're talking about an unusual, high-volume, non-neighborhood use of a private road, and that's what makes it an impermissible use of this road, to try to convert a private road to a road that's open to the public. Now, last meeting, or the one in October, the last meeting for this project, back in October 2016, I gave a handout to the board, and if you don't have it, I have an extra copy here that I can give you, which was the State Attorney General giving a legal opinion to the Walton County attorney at that time, which I think was George Ralph Miller, on a similar issue: is what are the county's rights regarding private road versus public road? And the state attorney general made it clear that there's a big distinction between private roads and public roads. This is clearly a private road, and we cannot turn it into a public road. The next page in your handout is similar to the poster that we saw that talked about compatibility issues. And then the last couple of pages here, this is the picture of a snappy turtle here in South Walton. And you see how that business is run. And you see that that's not a neighborhood business. It's not geared towards neighborhood. It's not something you'd expect to find next door to your single-family home in a residential preserve area. It's just simply not compatible because it's not a neighborhood use. And the next picture shows similar. And you can see that both of these pictures show a lot of goods for sale and rental carts and bicycles and everything out in the public parking area, out in the parking lot. And it shows that it's clearly a retail use designed for the tourist, which again is perfectly fine in an appropriate location. Now, I heard for the first time a few minutes ago that there may be a new project being proposed, or some sort of a new building plan, and we haven't seen yet. I don't think that the public has seen that yet. So if there is a new proposed plan for this project, I think we need to allow public comment on that, and so I'd ask that the county allow a period of public comment for that, so that the citizens of Walton County can provide comments on that, so my clients can provide comments. It's not something that the county should just go ahead and approve tonight without any public comments or notice to the public. And another area that's a big concern to the people throughout the Dalton neighborhood is drainage. And I know that there's a property owner in the neighborhood, and if I could see that letter. who's already objected to the same issue here. I'm sorry, we just have the one copy of it. I'd like that admitted into evidence, and that's from the Mays. Do you want to just hand that around and let it come to you?
Why don't you hand it to the applicant and let's see
Okay,
if they
sure.
have any objections?
Yes.
Is he still talking for that man out there, or is he now moved on to somebody else?
He's supposed to be talking for that man, and I want to hear what you have to say, but we have a lot of people to hear
Right.
from, so if
And
you
this
could.
is my last
The reason
point.
we continued this hearing
Yes.
the last time is because he took up so much time. I want to hear from these people out here.
And
I
if you
don't
just,
want to have to continue it again.
In all courtesy, we're trying to help you
sure,
move
if
on.
you just give me 3 more minutes, I'll try to sum it up real quick. Thank you.
Let me see a copy of the letter you
He's making copies of it.
Yes, sir, yes, 3 minutes.
All right, so let me just skip over that for a moment. I'll just touch on it, then we'll come back to it once you have the copies. But I know that there's a serious drainage problem in the neighborhood, and my client's concerned about it, something that he spoke to me about, and that I know the county's trying to address the drainage problem, but we got the drainage problem on a Brown. I think we have a slide that talks about the Brown Street area. We have a poster for that. And I know there might be some confusion about Brown Street versus Brown Drive versus May Drive, but I want to make it clear that Brown Street, which is where the county is proposing some of its work, is actually outside the neighborhood, but the county is proposing some additional work inside the neighborhood, inside the Dalton neighborhood. And so we should not add another project that would make the existing drainage even worse. And that's as part of something the county's trying to work out with the Mays, is whether the Mays would allow that. The Mays have said no, and that letter will come around here, I think, in just a minute. But we already know that the county's work trying to address that is not going through right now, and we need one on this side. Greg, could you just grab one to hand to the
And make sure
applicant?
you stay on Mr. Tones. Make sure.
I am. Thank you,
sir.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Right, so just in summary, because of all these issues dealing with compatibility and drainage, problems with, traffic, that the commission should deny this use for the same purpose, same reason that it denied the Hampton Inn just a short time ago. It's got the same fatal flaws, and so the county should deny this application for those reasons. Thank you very
sir.
much.
Okay,
Were there any questions before I go back to the audience?
Any questions? Could we have Becky Rutledge? Could you come on up, please? Okay,
Hang on, Madam Chair,
yes.
this letter was presented. You've seen it. Do you have any objections? I'm sorry.
Can I go on? Mark, can I go on?
She's on. Tell us real quick if she has any objections.
We'll respond to this.
Okay. Subject to rebuttal, I would recommend you accept it into evidence, and we'll just mark it as objector's exhibit. It's a letter dated January 9th, 2017 to the commission from Mr. and Mrs. Bally May. Thank you, ma'am. Yo, you're good.
Becky Swift. Becky Swift, would you like to speak? Come on up, please. Spell your last name for the audience, please, or for the reporter.
It's Becky Swift, S-W-I-F-T, and I have lived on South Gulf Drive for the past 22 years. And I don't know if the bicycle accident you were referring to was mine, but I was stopped at the stop sign at 30A and South Gulf Drive, and people were coming around the curve by Dalton, and I was stopped, and a bicycle hit my car because they were going too fast. And also, you mentioned the stormwater drainage. When y'all passed the paving of South Gulf Drive, I had a suit against the county because the drainage was coming in my house and Mr. Douglas Wood's house, who is no longer living. And Lynn Stafford helped me with this. And the county did, right before the time was up, come in and put curbing and proper drainage on one block, the first block of South Gulf Drive. And that's, you know, you told me, they said they had stormwater plans for every county road. And obviously, they don't maybe use them until there's a complaint. But I've lived there and I know how much traffic there is on that area. And I was the one that got my car hit while I was stopped at the stop sign by someone on the bike path coming from the Dalton area, because it is a curve and it does go downhill. It is not properly marked that there's a stop sign at every road, and people do not know. And plus, the bike path is not maintained all the time. Sometimes there's a lot of sand on it and dirt, and I understand that after rains that's going to happen. But that also prevents some of the bicyclists from being able to stop. When there's sand, they slide. But I had over $1,000 worth of damage done to my car while I was fully stopped. There was no ticket given to me or anybody. It was just an accident. And if you put a snappy turtle thing like that, I don't know where you're going to have these cars going. Are they going to go on South Gulf Drive, which is paved, or will they be on Dalton Drive, which is not paved? Or will they be coming from Brown Street, William Street, May, any of those in there? They're not paved. South Gulf is the only paved road in that section. And the drainage was very bad until the county did come in and do one block, and they made it where they had the culverts and diverted the water where it would go down to Eastern Lake in the proper manner through filtering systems. So my opinion is this is totally out of line. There's too much traffic there already, and it's a 2-lane road with a bike path. And tourists are not aware sometimes that streets come up to it because it's not marked anywhere. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Becky. Nina Horn?
I'm going to pass, thank you. I'd like to pass over to Rod Wilson and ask him to take my
Okay, we're going to go down the list. I'm sorry. Mark Shea. Mark Shea? Are you here, Mark? Donna Bowers. Donna Bowers. Donna, are you here? Margaret Carl. Margaret Carl, are you here? Penny Norcutt. I believe it's Penny Norcutt. Northcutt. And there might have been some confusion. This was not a sign-in sheet that you're here. It was a sign-in sheet that you wanted to speak. So we're so sorry. We tried.
Yeah, he told us it was to sign in for the meeting.
Okay. Penny Northcutt, I don't see that hand. Okay. All right. Just let me know if you just signed in. Just say, I just signed in. Sue Hollenstein.
I just signed in.
Okay. John Hollenstein.
I just signed in.
Okay. Bernadette Flannery. Okay. I tell you what, raise your hand on this side if you would like to speak. Okay, come, you in the green shirt, come to the podium. Spell your last name so we can write it down.
My name is Jimmy Coon, K-U-H-N.
Jimmy, have you spoken before?
No, ma'am, I have not. I have spoken in front of the commission on many
know.
occasions.
I just recognize your face. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I got a little more hair than I usually do.
Go ahead.
My name's Jimmy Coon. My wife and I are residents of Dalton Drive. There are 31 homes on Dalton Drive. Of these 31 homes, 13 are homes for full-time residents. 16 are weekend vacation homes that are not rented. Only 2 houses are short-term rentals on our street. This is not a tourist street. This is a quiet, residential neighborhood. My wife and I are opposed to this development and to the county creating an intersection at 30A at the north end of Dalton Drive. Dalton Drive is a dead-end, private dirt street with a dead-end sign. Proof of that can be found on Book 52, pages 478 to 80 in the Walton County records. This document was included as a part of our real estate closing papers when we purchased our home in 2012. I've emailed the commissioners this document and a diagram that presents the map of the roads described therein, and I have a copy if you need that today. Nothing was stated in my closing documents that Dalton Drive is a public road. Some claim the street is public, but to my knowledge, the county has not presented any documents that indicate that the residents of Dalton Drive have relinquished ownership of the road. In fact, I have 4 documents that I can provide where the county admits that Dalton Drive is a private road, or at least the portion of the road where the intersection is proposed. The developer's plan includes using our private street for access to his development. The owners of Dalton Drive have not given this developer permission to use our road, and we have not agreed with him, if he is an owner of the road, for him to use it for that purpose. Given that Dalton Drive is a private street, creating a public intersection on 30A to a private street is not appropriate for the owners of Dalton Drive. Opening Dalton Drive to 30A with a paved intersection would dramatically increase traffic on our dirt street. Paving the north end of Dalton Drive will also increase water runoff and a danger of flooding on our street and the neighborhood. Rather than create a new dangerous intersection on 30A, why not require the developer to access 30A from his own property and not Dalton Drive? And you've seen the traffic triangle that was presented earlier, so I will not go into that also. In summary, Dalton Drive is private. Traffic will increase on our street. Drainage is an issue. Safety is a concern. It's incompatible with our neighborhood and street, and I promise you I will never shop at that store. My wife and I appeal to the commissioners to protect our quiet residential neighborhood by not allowing this developer to use our private street. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Kuhn, K-U-H-N.
If you would hold your applause so we can go a little bit faster. On the front row, is there anyone on the front row that would like to speak? Have you spoken before, Mr. Minshew?
I have not.
Okay, come on.
My name's Ken Minshew, I live at 21 Blackwater Street. I'd like my attorney to speak for me right now. Lisa Minshew.
Thank you, Commissioners. Surprisingly, we are not related. Our names spelled differently, but we both are Minshews. I represent Mr. Ken Minshew, who is an owner of a property that is adjacent to the proposed development, and he is in opposition to the proposal. I also signed in because I also represent the Mays, who have been talked about quite a bit today, and a letter from them has been put into the record. They also are in opposition to the development. The Mays own 3 lots directly across from the proposed area for development on Dalton Drive. They also own several lots along 30A that are all zoned for commercial use. They're not in opposition to development, but they're in opposition to this development for many reasons. One in particular that Mr. Minshew and the Mays are in agreement on is that the use of Dalton Drive as the primary access point is incompatible with the use of that private drive. I haven't seen any of the documentation that was referenced earlier that this road was accepted for maintenance. What I do know is that all of the deeds of all of the lots in this subdivision provide that each of the lot owners owns an undivided interest in that road. And none of those lot owners have been communicated with by these owners. The owner has not come to any of the lot owners and requested agreement on how that private road is going to be used. There's no agreement on who's going to maintain it, who's going to take care of it. We have serious concerns about the drainage that's going to come off of a paved road onto this very undeveloped neighborhood. The Mays have, for many generations, maintained this area, and it has always been maintained in old North Florida style, which is, to the greatest extent possible, you leave existing foliage, you leave the roads unpaved, you disturb the existing environment the least possible. If any of you have had the opportunity to go into the Dalton Cottage area, the Dalton Drive, you will see old Florida the way we all knew it when we grew up. It's one of the few areas that are left that way. Having a commercial development of this nature, which is going to take access through this pristine area, is completely incompatible and unacceptable to the Mays and to Mr. Minshew. We also, as we raised in our letter, there's an ongoing drainage problem to the south of this property that the county is working on trying to correct. Currently, accessing May Drive, Williams Street, and Center. We've been in communication with the county about that work, and the Mays have not have not agreed to have any of that drainage work done on their private property. So the drainage problem is not solved, and this is only going to make it worse. So we would ask that you deny this application. If the owner wants to work with the owners, the other owners of this private road, they need to come to the owners and work it out. Thank you.
Ms. Minshew,
Yes.
for our court reporter, would you spell your name and your client's name so they both?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Lisa Minshew, MINSHEW, 433 East Government Street, Pensacola, Florida. I represent Ken Minshew, MINCHEW. Long story about 7 brothers from Ireland. I also represent Bailey, Mr. and Mrs. Bailey May. That's BALLEYE May, MAY. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. We are on the second row. Anyone on the second row that would like to speak? Come on up. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Garner, Garner, Chandler, Chandler, and I am speaking in opposition of the development due to the compatibility within the neighborhood. In looking at the compatibility analysis presented by Saxon LeSueur, I see several things that don't make sense to me. On page 3 of their analysis, I don't know what page it is in your book, it describes the neighborhood shopping center as being directly across the street from the subject property. It is not. It's across the street over several lots. Page 5 of the compatibility analysis says that the subject property is far smaller than the adjacent commercial developments. Yet on page 6 of the compatibility analysis, it lists the developments, one of which is Midgrove Center at over 97,000 square feet. However, that property has never been developed, and I'm not even certain that it's been approved by the county commission or the planning department. So I don't think that we can consider that as a comparable development because it's not even there. Looking also at that list, when it says that the subject property is far larger than most of the other developments in the area, I just don't see that. The exceptions are the self-storage units, which have been there a long time, the church, the townhomes that are under construction, the Old Florida Fish House, and again, that neighborhood retail development, and they're all on the north side of 30A. There's not a development anywhere near that scale south of 30A. And then looking at the other developments within the area, it's by far much smaller. And then finally, on a very side note, I worked for the seller of the home that Mr. Kuhn bought, and I can assure you he did his due diligence before he purchased it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone on the third row? Third row. Come to the podium. You have to come to the podium and spell your name. You have to come to the podium. Sorry. We like to see your pretty face.
I'm Fran Mitchell. I live on South Gulf Drive. And I just want to let you know that when I signed in, I said, this is to sign in to speak, and the gentleman says, everybody has to sign in. So what you've got is a list of 100,000 people that don't really want to speak. We're just here supporting our
Right.
community.
And I think we fixed that. So
Okay.
Thank you very much. Fourth row. Anybody on the fourth row? Did I miss you, sir? Come on up.
My name is David Cook. I live in the Sugarwood subdevelopment. You'll be happy to know I'm not an attorney. I'm here to support the Dalton Drive folks and encourage that this not be approved. I don't think I have too much to add to the technical issues. I do raise an issue that concerns me as a member of District 5 that our representative is not here. And we're also missing Ms. Nipper, Commissioner Nipper, who has been pretty vocal about wanting to support the entire community. So I'm kind of wondering how it is that this fragmented board can decide this case. And then beyond that, I would not be as nice as the first gentleman, as the attorney. Quite frankly, the snappy turtle is an eyesore, and I don't, it really isn't belong anywhere in the caliber of things that we have on 38. Thank you.
Mr. Cook, your representative is on the front row, and Mr. Davis, would you address why we have 3 commissioners up here?
Yes, ma'am. As I said earlier, this is a continued hearing. The first half of the hearing was heard prior to the time that we've had 2 new elected commissioners. Since it's a quasi-judicial hearing, it's my opinion that the 2 new commissioners could not just watch tapes or review transcripts and participate. And there's some case law that supports that, at least in the judicial realm. And so it's my opinion that the only folks who could participate in terms of voting participation would be the 3 members of the board who heard the first half or the first part of the quasi-judicial hearing.
Thank you. On the 4th row. We're on the 4th row now, over on this side. No, sir. 4th row. Well, let's go right down this so I won't get confused. 4th row. Anybody 4th? 5th row. 5th row.
My name is Rhoda Orm Johnson. I have not been sworn in.
Ma'am, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
I'm a resident of Dalton Drive. On that first slide, you can see my house just below and on the left side of the proposed development. My husband and I have lived there for 20 years. We're horrified at the thought of having that enormous commercial development on our little street. But I want to make a comment on the business plan of the proposed development. It is commonly seen that when there's a standalone shop such as this, selling beach stuff we all know are for the tourists, it doesn't do very well. In fact, there's one on 98 that has gone bankrupt and is now a Goodwill shop. So to have this standalone beach shop there is inviting bankruptcy and an empty building on our little street. So I hope that you will consider all of these compatibility issues as well as the whole business angle of the thing and deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. 5th row. Anybody on the 5th row? Don't know how many's back there. The next row back. Anybody in the back of on this side? Way back in the very back, sir. Come up. And then while he's coming up, if there's anybody on the side that wants to speak, if you'll just make a little line right there in the front, so we can keep this moving really fast. Thank you, sir.
I'm a school teacher running this. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you again. Thanks for the opportunity. Happy New Year. Ed Billeaud, I have been sworn in. That is Billeaud. My wife and I have had our home on Eastern Lake for 20 years, a little more than that, actually. Coming before you today, I'll read a very brief statement to ask that this project not be allowed to go forward as currently proposed, not because of any desire to deny this man his right to run a business, but only in the hope of keeping alive what makes this place so special for the tourists, the citizens, and the businesses alike. We're in danger of losing that. The nature of this place, its charm, the unique thing that makes it so special and attractive to all who come here is not the amount of development we have, but the amount we don't have. That's the difference maker. That's why people chose this place to visit, live, and work over other locations. Once we lose that, we will never be able to get it back. The project, as it is proposed, is not appropriate in scale or aesthetics for this location. It's out of character with the other businesses and many residences nearby. The preamble to the Walton County's own code book clearly states that the intent and purpose of the code itself is, and I'm sure you all know this, as I quote, to foster and preserve public health, safety, comfort, and welfare, and to aid in the harmonious, orderly, aesthetically pleasing, and socially beneficial development in the county. Just below that, still in the very introduction to the code itself, from which everything that follows must describe, it says that any development must, and again I quote, enhance the aesthetic appeal of the entire county, and particularly South Walton County, in order to foster tourism and to provide a pleasing environment for Walton County citizens. That's why we're here, all these people. Our contention, our judgment as citizens and residents of the immediate surrounding area is that this project simply fails to meet those requirements by any reasonable measure. It does. Regardless of one's opinion with regard to the size and scope of other developments having already been allowed on 30A, and whether or not mistakes have been made, there is no good reason to make this mistake. This is not just any town USA. It's not. And we have something truly special and irreplaceable here, and it can be lost, not all at once, but bit by bit. We should all unite and come together and do everything we can as a community and as a government for the good of all citizens, tourists, and businesses alike to make sure that this does not happen. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else on the side? Anyone on the side? Last call. Okay, let's
Sure,
go.
I will.
Wait, are you on the side?
Sorry,
Yes,
I
you're
was in the side, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Were you sworn, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Scott Gell. I live on South Lake Drive, which is a couple streets down from Dalton. This is my daughter, Cora. She hasn't spoken here yet. I have. She hasn't spoken at all yet, actually, but any day now. I just wanted to second most of what I've heard today. I can't really add to it, but I can speak to the nature of this neighborhood and say it's very quiet, dirt road, family neighborhood, mostly owner-occupied. I live there with my family. The nature of this business seems entirely inappropriate for where it's proposed to go. And as a resident of the neighborhood, I will not be shopping at this business. So I can speak to the complaints of whether or not it serves our neighborhood or not. So thanks.
Thank you. Lovely baby. All right, first row over here. Second row over here. Yes, ma'am, right there. I'll get you next because you're really on the left side, sir. I'll get you next. Get ready.
My name is Judy Byrne Riley, B-Y-R-N-E-R-I-L-E-Y. I own 2 pieces of property on that end, right adjacent to this. Lot 4, which is next to 5 and 6, and what would be Lot 2, but it's 182 Dalton. I know you have certain requirements and things that you can do as far as the commercial piece of property, but what you can do, whatever goes there, must have ingress and egress onto that piece of property, not down Dalton Drive. I am extremely concerned. The idea of paving that road, the idea of allowing a business to have access in and out of their business on Dalton Drive really changes the whole idea. I own those properties because I want it closed, because the sign says dead end. The sign says county maintenance ends. I want to keep it that way. I don't want it paved. Nobody here wants that road paved. Nobody here wants that road opened, and you have that ability to stop that, and I urge you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the gentleman in the very back. Very back. Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Henry Paul Lefebure. That's spelled L-E-F-E-B-U-R-E. My wife and I and daughter have a home on this block, contiguous on the opposite corner on South Gulf Drive, 112 South Gulf Drive. This is a nice old Florida neighborhood. Dirt roads, we have a nice tree canopy down there with tall trees. I'm going to be very short and sweet about this in 3 words. It don't fit and it won't fit. I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're on this right side now, about the second row. Anyone on the second row? Third row? Fourth row? Yes, sir, come on up. Thank you for your patience.
My name's Rod Wilson, 590 North Walton Lakeshore Drive, Inland Beach. First of all, I want to commend these presentations that have been made. I think they're fantastic, and I agree without reiterating everything that's been said, but everything has been said by them. I don't like this project at all. If I had to describe myself, I'd say I was pro-development, but not for this deal. But I'm not only opposing it because I don't think it belongs there. I'm opposing it because what it means for the future, and that's what I want to focus on with you right now. This project appears to be way out of the box in terms of compatibility. And approval of this project, I think, would set a dangerous precedent for future new development and redevelopment along the 30A corridor, because it's going to severely lower the bar for what is considered compatible and acceptable development along 30A. I think it's very dangerous if this thing is approved. By approving this project, I think you're really resetting the table and opening up Pandora's box to some development that not many people in this room and others in Walton County would approve or want to be a part of. I'm just suggesting, in light of looking at the future implications of what we're talking about, that you be very careful here. Looking forward, I could argue that the relaxed standards that flow from this approval could lead to, I don't know, maybe a sort of commoditization of 30A and larger projects and larger buildings than any of us are accustomed to or that any of us would want, that could destroy the uniqueness that draws people here and reduce us to just another resort community like everybody else. Now, I know the Land Development Code is going through some revisions. I also know it's going to take some time, and between the time of now and when that's done, there are going to be a lot more hearings and a lot more applicants looking for approvals to build projects on 30A. The unfortunate thing is, if the standards are applied or the standards that come out of the hearing like this for the approval of this project, we're going to start dying of 1,000 cuts. In my view, there's no compelling reason to approve this project. I don't get it. I would close by respectfully requesting that you put a stake in the ground and exercise your responsibility and power as the stewards of this community and the protector of the health, safety, and welfare of this community and the people who live here, and vote no on this project because it's not compatible, there's safety concerns, there are impacts on the adjacent residential community, and finally, because of the dangerous precedent you will have put in place and created for future development and redevelopment along 30A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay, anyone else on the right side? Okay, while he's coming up, just raise your, I'm not going to say I'm going to let you, but just raise your hand if you have not spoken and you wanted to. Okay, all right, perfect. Go ahead.
Robert Raymond, R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. I'm going to go very quickly.
Were you sworn, Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to re-say what everyone else has said, agree with it. There's an alternative that I want in the record that just shows an alternative to the roadway plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Alan?
Alan Osborne, for the record. I was not sworn.
Mr. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Would you spell your name, please, Alan?
Osborne. What I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to rehash all the things I think you know, is I'm going to say something other people can't say in here. I've probably been to over 300 of these planning meetings, and I was here the night that the Land Development Code was adopted. I was one of the people screaming to do it. I was living south of 98 when somebody built something and flooded me out, so I moved somewhere else where somebody built and flooded me out. And every time one of these things happened, it lowered my property value, which lowers the taxes that you collect. But more important than money is people's lifestyles. When you attack somebody's home, you pick a fight. And they're going to defend it. And sooner or later, you're going to pick a couple more fights with people like me that just won't give up their home that easy. For years, and tonight, I want these people to know behind me, this isn't an isolated thing you're seeing here where a lot of people came to oppose a project. It happens all the time, but just people show up for the things that affect them the most. If you look at the agenda tonight, you'll see the vast majority of the quasi-judicial land use issues are changes in land use. Why? Every one of you commissioners, plus the two in the hallway, ran on the platform that our infrastructure was overloaded. So why is the planning department recommending changes to everything that goes against the code? Like that gentleman, I'm not going to repeat the code. You guys know I know it by heart. He said, you're here to protect our lifestyle too. You're representatives of the people, just not a tax machine. And when this many people show up to defend their lifestyle, and I will tell them that over and over again, 90% of the time, I'd say the Hampton Inn was one of the few things that didn't pass. And that was the right track, because every time you approve one of these things that doesn't fit, you send the message out, come on over here and break the rest of our code. Because we've set precedents that will allow you to take us to court and say, you let him do it, why can't I? You're not protecting anything by changing all these land uses. Yeah, I mean, it's clearly insane for you guys to campaign on that we've overloaded the infrastructure. I want everybody to understand that the comp plan was adopted based on the infrastructure we have. And never have I seen a land use come back and say, you know something? You're going to have to change the whole infrastructure of that area you want to change the land use on so it can support this. You just waive it, you do it, nothing happens, and the quality of life goes down. While you may see the numbers of development here as increasing the tax rolls, when it drives down an area's aesthetic value, because people with money that want to come to those kind of neighborhoods from Atlanta and all those places, they're sick of that kind of lifestyle. That's why they come here and spend $1 million on a bungalow that looks like it might fall to the ground. It's a lifestyle, and you can't price that. So the people here should leave today knowing, and you should know, that once again, the people's representatives haven't listened to the will of the people, and that's the most important thing we ever had.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, it's now time to hear from the applicant, the rebuttal from the applicant. Go ahead. Who would like to come first?
I'll come first.
Thank you. Glad you're doing better.
Thank you very much. I am. Everything's all good.
Okay.
Can you state your name, please?
Colleen Sachs, S-A-C-H-S. Thank you. I'm going to start out by addressing the road issue. And I am from Saxon LeSueur, and we represent the applicant, and I have been sworn. I'm going to address the road issue. Lois LeSueur will take up some other issues, and also Neil O'Connell, our engineer, is here if you have any questions that would be within his bailiwick. It seems like one of the key things is there has been some discussion over whether this is a private road or a public road. Well, in 2000, early of 2000, some owners from Dalton Drive approached the county asking that the road be county maintained. They needed some help with the road and needed to have things done, and asked for it to be county maintained. On March 28th, that came before the Board of County Commissioners, and the county commissioners accepted Dalton Drive as a county maintained road on a 4-1 vote. So it is a county maintained road, and that is very clearly in the public record of Walton County on page 12 of the minutes of that night. Motion by Commissioner Enfinger, seconded Commissioner Ryan to accept Mr. Butler's recommendation and accept Dalton Road District 1 for county maintenance. Ayes 4, nays 1. So that's, yes.
Okay, is that the entire length of Dalton Drive from 30A all the way down?
It did not take out any part of Dalton Drive. So when I read this and say that the county is maintaining Dalton Drive, or has accepted Dalton Drive for maintenance, at that time, yes, the county accepted all of Dalton Drive for maintenance. They didn't accept Dalton Drive less and accept any portion of it. And where that becomes important is we have statute 95.361 that are roads that are presumed to be dedicated to the county, state, or other municipality. Section 2 of that statute says that when a road that's been constructed by a non-governmental entity has been regularly maintained or repaired for the immediate past 7 years by a county, a municipality, or the Department of Transportation, whether jointly or severally, such road shall be deemed to be dedicated to the public.
and then the dedication vests all rights and title and easement and appurtenances in and to the road in the county if it's a county road. So, and having the county have maintained the road for 7 years is a evidence, is a rebuttable, there's a rebuttable presumption that it's a county road. The county can make it a prima facie case by saying, by signing a map and saying, yes, this is so, but the county has put it on the county maintained road list, which is also a public record. So people doing their due diligence when they purchased a piece of property in this area after 2000, after March 28th of 2000, had notice that this was a county maintained road because it was part of the public record. On March 31st, Ronnie Bell was the public works director at the time, and he notified the requester that had asked for the help with the assistance that he was going to tell 911 and the District 5 Road Department that this was a county maintained road. The requesters on June 1st wrote to Ronnie Bell describing the work that had been done by the county almost immediately and talking about future work that they would like to have done and thanking the county for being so responsive and helpful. So all of those things, when you look at it, we've got 7 years that we have that the county has maintained that at least, because we go back to 2000. And if anybody wanted to file anything saying that they disagreed with this since 2000, we go back to statute 95-361 and we look at section 4. Section 4 says any person, firm, corporation, or entity having or claiming any interest in and to any of the property affected by subsection 2, which is the one that grants the dedication after 7 years, shall have and is hereby allowed a period of 7 years after the initial date of regular maintenance or repair of the road to file a claim in equity or with a court of law against a particular governing authority, assuming jurisdiction over such property to cause a cessation of the maintenance and occupation of the property. So we don't have that. We don't have anybody that said that they have objected to it within that 7-year period. We have some letters that are fairly recent saying that they object to it now, but that doesn't take it out of the realm of being a county maintained road. When you look at the property appraiser's site and you see when property changed hands, a number of properties on that road have changed hands since March 28th of 2000. Those people purchased property that was a public road at that point. And so that's where we go on that. This is not a case where the developer is trying to take property from others. It is that private roads can become public roads. There are ways to do that. Eminent domain, we heard earlier, is one of those ways, but also 95-361 is another way. And I believe we had somebody from the county talking about filing a 95-361 at the hearing, the portion of the hearing that was held in October. Talking a little bit about the northern portion of the road and why it's important to have the access on Dalton instead of on 30A is it's Walton County's position that they reduce or limit driveway connections along County Road 30A whenever it's possible. We have a situation here where Dalton Drive could be open. We even saw in one of the documents an article in the Beach Breeze that was given out by Mr. Crew at the last portion of the hearing, where the county engineer, Dan Arner, said that the county, while the county had no current plans to connect Dalton Drive with CR 30A, however, it may make sense to do that in the future, and so held it open. So the county at that time in an article in 2005 was talking about their ability to open that road and all of that. So if that road were ever opened and you have this piece of property that also has a driveway going into it, you've got too many driveways right in a row. This piece of property is about 110 feet wide, and that just doesn't work. And it also allows us to put our parking closer to the back, and the LDC encourages and rewards us for parking in the rear of the property. There's been a lot of talk about the county proposing drainage work in the neighborhood, and that also goes along with roads becoming public. The accoutrement to roads can be drains and rights of way and everything, so that can be part of the roadway. And the bike path safety issues, talking about the bikes having to get into sand and things like that, would be helped if the bike didn't have to cross Dalton Drive, that's sandy, and then cross another driveway to go into this this shop if necessary. It would be better if you can have just Dalton Drive, have the initial portion of it paved, deal with your runoff issues that you're going to have to deal with, and the engineer can address some of that, and then have just one place where sand is maybe not going to collect now because it's paved, and for the bike path to continue along. So it seems like it makes good safety sense as well. Do you have any questions I can address regarding the road? No.
Good evening. My name is Lois Lesor with Saxon Lesor. We represent the applicant. I have been sworn. It seems to me that the initial confusion that needs to be cleared up is the land use on this property. Mr. Cruz went into a lot of elaborate explanation of what neighborhood commercial allows and doesn't allow. This is not designated neighborhood commercial. This is designated village mixed use, which is essentially the highest density and intensity land use in South Walton. It has been designated village mixed use since the comprehensive plan was initially adopted in 1996. This area was always designated village mixed use. It was always intended to be village mixed use. And the code does not distinguish between village mixed use that's north of 30A and village mixed use that's south of 30A. There's no distinction in the code anywhere about something being allowed north of 30A and not being allowed south of 30A. Applicants need to be able to figure out what they can do on their property based on the code. And the code specifically says village mixed use allows general commercial uses. One of the general commercial uses that are allowed in village mixed use is a retail store. The code doesn't say anything about how it has to be a retail store that doesn't serve tourists, or how it can't be a retail store that has to serve only locals. It can be a retail store of any kind, as long as it meets the density and intensity, in this case intensity since it's a commercial use, that's allowed on that property, and this particular proposal is well underneath the allowable intensity on that property, then it's a use that is allowed. It doesn't matter whether it will cater to tourists. It doesn't matter if it will cater to locals. What matters is the use allowed in the land use that was assigned to the property 20 years ago? I understand that the neighbors don't like the Snappy Turtle, which is another business that the same applicant owns. This is not going to be another Snappy Turtle, but they obviously believe that it is. Regardless, if they have issues with his other businesses, those issues are to be addressed by code enforcement. If he is violating the code in some way at one of his other businesses, then code enforcement needs to deal with that issue. That is not grounds to deny him his ability to develop this property. As long as he's meeting the code that you have set out and are here to enforce, as long as he's meeting those code provisions, then he is allowed to develop what he is proposing. I've heard that there are multiple stores nearby that have the same kind of merchandise. We heard someone say, well, this is going to be a standalone store, and so it's not going to be successful. Those are not concerns that are addressed in your land development code. Your concerns are, does it meet the use? Does it meet the density? Does it meet the intensity? Is he going to address his stormwater and his parking requirements and the other requirements, the technical requirements that are set out in the code? One thing that I think has been overlooked extensively by pretty much everyone who has testified against this, the two lots to the south of this property are also designated village mixed use and are very likely to also develop out as commercial. The property across the street from this is likely to develop out as commercial. They are all designated for village mixed use. And paving this road would allow the property to the rear and using this road as access to parking in the rear would allow that other piece of property access to its, or the owner of that piece of property, access to his property and access to his, whatever he decides to develop. It seems like the main concern everybody has is compatibility. And compatibility to a planner seems to me to be a little different than compatibility is understood by the general community. It's not about, do I like having this use next to me? It's not about, do I want this business next to me? It's about whether the use and the size and the intensity fit in with the other developments in the neighborhood of the same type so that it fits in with the overall scheme of development in that area. This entire area was originally designated for village mixed use. It was intended to develop out in either mixed use or commercial or relatively high intensity residential. The other parcels to the north are already developing out in those ways, and yes, Midgrove is, I believe, already approved, but they are going back and revising their plans. It's not a subjective test. It's looking at what is the square footage of the other commercial businesses within a quarter of a mile. It's looking at how much traffic and how much noise those other businesses within a quarter of a mile generate. How tall are they? There is another building, there are several other buildings that are also the same height in the general area. Those are the types of things that you look at. It doesn't come down to, and I don't want this in my neighborhood. It comes down to what else has been developed, what else is going to be developed, what is the plan for development in this area. They may not really want this area to be designated VMU, but that was a decision that was made 20 years ago by a completely different group of people, and it has been that way for the past 20 years. Several people have questioned the comparisons that we made in our compatibility analysis. We did exactly what we were directed to do by the planning department. We looked at every use within a quarter of a mile of the perimeter of this property. Some of those uses are across the road. Those are considered to be adjacent uses under your code and under the direction we were given by the planning department. The fact that they're north of 30A and this is south of 30A doesn't really matter from a compatibility standpoint. The fact that some of them are across the lake doesn't matter from a compatibility standpoint. They are still considered to be within that same neighborhood. The Walton County Comprehensive Plan specifically addresses how you provide for compatibility between uses that are potentially incompatible. It says, and I'm quoting, compatibility is to be ensured as follows. The county shall require landscaped buffers between adjacent land uses of differing intensity to control the impact of the higher intensity use on the surrounding area. Between residential and commercial land uses, the buffer shall be at least 20 feet in width. The applicant is not only providing a 20-foot vegetative buffer, he's also putting up a privacy fence that will further serve to screen his business from the one side of the property that abuts a single-family neighborhood. The property to the south is designated VMU. The property to the west is designated VMU. The property across the street is designated VMU. Only one side of the property abuts on single-family homes, and that side is being adequately buffered per the direction of the Walton County Comprehensive Plan. As far as the safety of putting the parking in the rear and not having a separate entrance off of 30A, We have presented our engineers' expert opinion that it is far better from a safety standpoint to have the entrance off of Dalton Drive. Your county staff has concurred with that. They have not presented any alternate expert opinion that it would be less safe to access off of Dalton Drive. Our engineer is here. He can address that if you would like to ask him about that further. And one thing that I think people need to understand that is different about the 30A scenic corridor from the US 98 scenic corridor, aesthetics are not part of the code for the 30A scenic corridor. Colors of buildings, your code is what your code is, and if you wish to change that, then you can change that for the future, and that may be something that the commission wants to consider. But right now, there are no aesthetic limits on what a particular person can, what type of building they can build on 30A in the scenic corridor. Now, our applicant, in response to the overwhelming public response to his initial development, provided an alternate plan at the first hearing. It's been public since that first hearing. It was intended to make it look more residential in character. We would prefer to go with that second plan, but we can use the first plan if they feel that that was, the preferred option. We tried.
When you refer to the first plan, is that the very first plan?
Had the towers.
Yeah, and the second plan was less.
It was
massive.
2 stories, less massive, less tall, looked more residential, had porches.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, this project meets all of the requirements, all of the current requirements of your code. It's well within the impervious surface ratio. It's well within the floor area ratio that's allowed. I think the floor area ratio allowed in VMU is 200%. This is at 27%. It's an allowable primary use in VMU. It's not required to have a multiple use because it's a very small parcel. The county can't suddenly impose new requirements on an applicant because the neighborhood has decided they don't like a particular project that's proposed that meets the code.
Ms. LeSueur?
Yes.
Question. Early on, a gentleman came up here and made a comment concerning the application that was submitted back in April of this year, I believe it was.
Yes.
And in there, the application dealt with lots 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Yet, as he's purported, lots 5 and 6 are not affiliated or owned by this applicant. So how did it get mixed in there? And
when they wrote down the legal description from the survey, they left out the part that said less and except lots 5 and 6. But the notices that went out to everyone for all of these public hearings specifically referenced the parcel by parcel ID number. The code does not require that you include a legal description. I think it's clear that everyone had adequate notice that this was going to be considered and where it was going to be located. We did post a sign on the property. I think the notice was completely and absolutely adequate to the neighborhood. It's unfortunate that small piece of the legal description was left off, but it was just an oversight.
does that affect anything concerning the application, counsel?
No, sir, in my opinion, it does not. They can move forward on the application.
One further comment that I would like to make, the staff has proposed a final order that says that there will be no outdoor storage allowed. Outdoor storage is allowed on 30A. Everyone on 30A uses outdoor storage. I think you will create a code enforcement nightmare if you start putting requirements on a lot-by-lot basis. if the community wishes to restrict outdoor storage on 30A, I think the community and the commission need to consider restricting outdoor storage on all of 30A, not just on this one specific lot. And our applicant would very much object to that restriction since no one else on 30A is under that restriction.
Do you know what number that is? Because I don't see it.
I believe it's like the next to last or the next to last.
I've got outdoor display of merchandise is prohibited, outdoor broadcasting of music is prohibited.
Outdoor display of merchandise. 30A allows outdoor display of merchandise, US 98 does not.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
No, thank you.
If I can just clarify real quick, there's some discussion about the plans that are in your packet. As you know, there's one plan, as I mentioned, that shows the towers. There's also a plan that they submitted under the heading of additional information. You'll see this in your packet. There's also a floor plan in there, a north elevation, and also a site plan. But this is one of the alternatives that they mentioned a minute ago that they were agreeable, if the board so choose, to be bound by as far as architectural styles. Just make sure that was clear, that there wasn't any confusion about that, because you do have a couple of those in your book.
Neil, are you going to present something? Is anyone else?
My name is Neil O'Connell of O'Connell and Associates Consulting Engineers. I have spoken already. I spoke at the initial meeting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Does anyone have any questions for Neil? No, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item would be a motion to accept or reject the application for the development order.
Can I just briefly respond to?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Rebuttal
No.
is last.
Thank you.
No, ma'am. Public comments over with. Public comments is over with, and rebuttal's been come through with. Ma'am.
Thank you for sitting down. Okay.
What's council? Oh, you through talking?
We are. We're waiting on a motion and a second. Of the plan. Just while he's looking for something, Plan 2 was the least massive, the least, show me that picture again so we can see what Plan 2 looked like again.
Two-story building. I think they dropped the towers, and have a site plan in your book as well. I think from the original application, the square footage was decreased. Isn't that right, Mac? But to some degree. But this is in your book as well under the additional information tab. It's a rendering that was done.
I'll step out on a limb first. I have some concerns about the lighting, and I have some concerns about the parking. I understand it's in VMU, but because and as we develop more and are closer to neighborhoods, we need to take that into consideration. So those are the two concerns. My third was the look of the building. I guess can we bind them to these? But I still have concerns about the lighting, the way it's going to broadcast into the neighborhood at night, because there may be old people in that neighborhood like me who like to go to bed early. And the parking is a consideration for me in the back, and so there are some things that I am just not comfortable with. So I guess I'll make the motion to deny the application. I just don't think it's compatible. I guess that's what I should have said, you know.
I'm going to second it for discussion. We got this comp plan, we got an LDC that nobody on this board was present when it was adopted back in 1996. And those that were here back in 1996 knew there was a concern with the board at that time as to whether or not to get involved in this land development code. And the state of Florida ran it down the county's throat, not only Walton County, but every county in the state of Florida, that you're going to come up with it. If you don't, we will. And they did. And we have been that tied around our neck since 1996. Now, everybody in this room probably knows or should know that we have contracted to have a company go out here and look at our comp and LDC and try to get rid of some of this stuff, clean up some other stuff, make it more compatible here and there. But it has not been done yet. We're probably at least another year away before a first draft of that change can be available to us. So right now, we are saddled, if you will, with what the code is and the comp plan. And we, as a quasi-judicial, like a judge, that is basically the law. And we have to either follow law or have some good reasoning as to not pass that particular project, and we can hang our hat on some type of statutory or code or something that would prevent us from approving this project. That's all I got to say right now.
Okay, we have any other comments? We have a motion and a second to deny the project. All in favor of denying, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to denying, say aye.
Aye.
So 2 to 1,
To
not to deny.
2 to 1, 2. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Not to deny the project.
So is there was a motion to deny and it failed on a 2 to 1 vote?
Yes.
Okay. So
Do we need to make?
we would need a substitute motion to approve the project.
Say.
A substitute motion
To approve the project.
Well, based upon my previous comments, a motion to approve.
Okay, can we approve with stipulations?
Well, I would assume we can, as far as going by, what's it, Plan B or the second thing, whatever they got it titled in there, that it be built according to that. We could probably put the lighting under some type of restriction, directional, on-site, not off-site.
Yes, Commissioner. In your packet, you have a proposed order, and I believe in your book, it is this plan is entitled Alternate 1 Building Design. There's also a site plan and a floor plan in there that corresponds to this. But also in your book, you have a proposed development order. A proposed order that has the restrictions that we had mentioned before about the outdoor display and music and so forth as well.
Yeah, it looks like sign control, outdoor display of merchandise. Under the sign control, you have lights. Lights for signs should be directed or shielded such that the light sources of glare from the light sources is directed away from or shielded from the beach and of the right-of-way. Then you have outdoor broadcasting of music is prohibited, and then a choice of the first design or the second design, I believe. Your motion was the second.
Okay, let me go ahead and just change that motion. Motion to approve based upon the following, well, I'm not going to read them all into the record, but basically what was entered is a copy of the final draft or final order to include the new alternative building size drawing. I think it'd be, if you understand that, and use that and not use the original #1 drawing.
Commissioner, just for clarification, you're including all of the conditions in the proposed order, and you're including approval of the second design as submitted in the previous.
That's correct.
Does that include the prohibition
It
of outdoor
apparently
storage?
does. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we have a second. Discussion? Discussion from the commissioners. You have any? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'll say
Any
no.
opposed, like sign. So 3-2-0 to accept.
2 to
number-
1.
2 to 1 to accept Plan 2 with the conditions. Okay.
take a break.
Let's take about a, how long, 5, 10 minute break.